everybody. Good afternoon and welcome once again to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. Earl Strader, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, as well as Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Program Administrator, Public Health, Emergency Preparedness and Response for the Department of Health and Human Services. Today we have two special guests as well. We have with us Kelly Groff, who is the President and CEO of Visit Montgomery, as well as Corey Van Horn, also from Visit Montgomery. Members of the media, remember to use the chat during the Q&A portion of this presentation. And with that, good afternoon to you, Mr. County Executive.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. Sorry I'm a little bit late. I was at the Fallen Officers ceremony. We honor and remember the fallen officers over the county's last 100 years of having a police department, and today was the day for that ceremony. So sorry for being a little bit late here. The start of May means the beginning of several important campaigns for Montgomery County. That includes Building Safety Month for our Department of Public Safety. Throughout the month, DPS will offer free residential maintenance inspections for the first 300 families that sign up. The best way to do this is for residents to call 311 to see if they qualify. During this first week of the campaign, DPS leaders want to remind the public that building safety starts at home. May is also Asian American Pacific Islander Month, Islander Heritage Month. And on Monday, the county released the Healthcare Providers Handbook on Hindu patients to coincide with the start of AAPI Heritage Month. This is the first handbook of its kind in the United States, providing detailed information specifically for Hindi and Jain patients. The guidebook also aims to inform healthcare providers of religious beliefs and traditions practiced by Hindus, as well as dietary needs of Jain patients. It covers a broad range of topics, including prayer, maternity services, diet, traditional medicines and remedies, and end-of-life issues, along with care for the elderly, as well as county and state resources that might be available. The book's a partnership between our Asian Pacific American Advisory Group and the State of Maryland Commission on South Asian American Affairs. I want to thank the co-chair of the committee group, Ishani Chowdhury, and the county's Asian community liaison, Yi Shen, for their work in bringing this resource to the public and spreading the word about it. The Office of Community Partnerships will now focus on outreach to hospitals, nursing homes, private ambulatory services, and community organizations and health fairs. Tourism and travel are important to Montgomery County's economy, and we're also a hospitality hub with Marriott International, Choice Hotels, and other hospitality companies that service the world. Nearly 20,000 visitor-supported jobs represent 4.4% of all Montgomery County's workforce. We have always been a destination for both leisure and business travel prior to the pandemic, and Montgomery County is the most visited county in Maryland, welcoming over 6.8 million visitors and generating $1.4 billion in spending in our local economy. From arts and cultural institutions such as Strathmore, Glenstone, the American Film Institute, Brookside Gardens, to world-renowned golf courses and hiking trails, as well as an incredible diversity of restaurants and cuisines from some of the best chefs in the world. There's something for everybody in Montgomery County, and we're continuing to build new attractions. One of my favorite projects that I'm excited to see open this year is the new Crossvines facility in Poolesville. I'm especially proud of this project because I proposed it while I was still a council member and have been working on it with the team ever since. Crossvines is a research farm specializing in grape growing, and we're looking at grape growing underneath solar panels. It's an events venue and a dining destination and a learning hub all in one. Crossvines is going to be a game changer, not only for the county, but our state's tourism economy. So what Crossvines is, it's essentially what they call a crush pad in the world of wine. It's a facility where the county's providing the equipment to do crushing and processing of grapes, storage tanks, steel and barrels for winemakers to store their wines. And the idea from its inception was to create a place where farmers could begin getting into grape growing. It turns out that Montgomery County is in a climate zone that is actually perfect for my favorite grapes, red grapes of the European variety. And we are well suited for it. We have soils that are actually well suited for it. And I got interested in it probably 12 years ago, when I was at a presentation when basically we were told the problem with wine in Maryland wasn't the grapes, it was the growers who were tended to be amateur and really hadn't elevated it to a more professional thing. Well, grape growing and winemaking is getting professional now. We're going to have a program I think it's at either USG or Montgomery College that's going to offer a certificate in winemaking, which is a big deal. It's going to help farmers. So instead of having each farmer have to put down $1 million for equipment they need, we'll be able to create one facility with the equipment that farmers can share. And a lot of times when you're processing grapes, you can go through, crush your grapes in a matter of hours rather than days or weeks. And so allow us to serve multiple farmers in getting grapes processed and ready for winemaking. The county will have a winemaker, but farmers could also bring in their own winemaker. And this is the goal here, is to add another crop to the ag reserve and another high value crop. Grapes, when they leave the farm gate, if they leave in a bottle, they're the number 2 value crop. If they leave as raw grapes, they leave, I think, as number 4 value crop. And another interesting factoid about grape growing is that the state of Maryland requires that anybody buying grapes, needing supplemental grapes for their wine production, have to buy Maryland grapes first. So if you're growing Pinot Noir or Cabernet grapes and somebody else needs grapes, they have to look at Maryland sources before they go out of state. So it's going to be good for farmers. It's going to be good for tourism. One of the things we're talking about today. It's one of the things that I thought about back when I initiated this idea was replicating the kind of wine tourism you see in Northern Virginia. We have the soil and the climate to do that. And so I'm excited about this project getting underway. As we approach this summer, we look forward to a busy travel and tourism season. I'm reminded of how important the industry is to both our local economy and for Maryland. Montgomery County receives over $86 million in taxes that come from tourism activities. And today I'm happy to welcome the team from Visit Montgomery, who are here to share some of the great things going on in travel and tourism and to promote this effort to bring more visitors to Montgomery County. And I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Kelly Groff. And after that, we'll take media questions on the Discover MoCo campaign.
Thank you, County Executive Elrich, and thanks everybody for having us on today. I'm joined by Corey Van Horn, also our Chief Strategy Officer. So Discover MoCo Month, this is the first time we've done this, and really it was pulled together as a way to celebrate small businesses, tourism, and really the entire entrepreneurial spirit here in Montgomery County. And as the County Executive mentioned, we are a hospitality hub in the businesses that are located here. So every week in the month of May, there will be a different theme. This week is Shop MoCo Week, which aligns with National Small Business Week. And next week, we actually celebrate National Travel and Tourism Week, which is in its 40th anniversary. And that is a universal celebration of U.S. travel communities and their essential role in stimulating economic growth. As the county executive mentioned, we had $1.4 billion in spending by visitors, whether they were day trip or overnight visitors. We'll also launch Hotel Week during National Travel and Tourism Week, encouraging people to visit here. And May 15 through 21, the following week, is MoCo Eats Week. Everybody knows we have a wonderful showing of our cultural diversity through all of the restaurants that are here in Montgomery County. And that's the week we encourage everybody to go out and support our restaurants. And the last week will be our kickoff to summer to really talk and promote the attractions, the parks, outdoor adventures, trails, our brewery and winery industry, as the county executive just mentioned, and we'll kick off our summer that last week of May. So I'm here today to tell everybody to invite your family and friends to visit with you and stay in our hotels and spend all your money.
Corey, do you have any opening remarks or no? Do you?
I echo Kelly's comments. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So then we are going to open it up for the Q&A portion of this presentation. Members of the media, if you have any questions regarding National Small Business and Shop MoCo Week, Discover MoCo Month, can you write it up on the chat or raise your hand so that you can ask the questions to our guests? Any questions for the folks from Visit Montgomery today? No questions? Going once? Going twice? All righty then. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Have a pleasant day. And Mr. County Executive, you may continue with the media briefing.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about a couple of important groundbreaking projects that occurred in the last week. The first was an affordable housing project that was developed by MHP. This is MHP's largest project to date, one of the county's largest as well, with a total investment of more than $100 million. It's going to create 200 affordable units in the Forest Glen area off Georgia Avenue in Silver Spring. 3 out of every 4 units are meant for renters earning at or below 60% of area median income. More innovative projects like this that help us add desperately needed affordable housing are in the works. And I want to emphasize this reaches into incomes below 60% of area median income. Most of what gets built in the county that passes for affordable housing is serving people between 60 and 70, maybe 75% of area median income. These mean incomes north of $60,000 a year. We produce very little for the tens of thousands of families that are below that. So this is an important project for us. Also on Friday, in the midst of a torrential rainstorm, we had a crowd of more than 50 people come to the Burtonsville Shopping Center to get an update on development there and break ground on a community plaza. The development will add a minority-owned gym and fashion retailer TJ Maxx in 2024. Last year, the developer announced the Sprouts Market will open there later this year, and it's important to recognize the help we receive from state lawmakers in securing money for improvements. The state of Maryland is contributing $7 million to revitalizing the Burtonsville Shopping Center. More money will be used to improve public transportation in the area and help us expand bus rapid transit to move more people from home to work and then back again while taking care of the road needs as well. Budget considerations. I know that the county council is currently reviewing my budget recommendations, and I want to mention something that is generally part of the public, not part of the public discussion, but is tremendously important. Something that is called OPEB, O-P-E-B, which is a trust fund that we created 15 years ago to set aside money to help pay for retirees' healthcare costs. Sounds good. We've been extremely prudent allocating money to this fund. We've done a good job of allocating money. Today, there's more than $750 million in this fund. And about a third of that money has actually come from interest and dividends on our investments. I will say, on the other hand, we've not spent a dime of that money on retiree health care. So this fund continues to grow and is yet to be used for the purpose which the charter says was to fund partly or entirely the cost of retiree health care. And the fund is going to continue to grow well with our investments. It's currently in such good shape that our financial advisors, one of the leading national consultants on fiduciaries on funds like this, tells us that we can withdraw millions to help pay for retiree health care costs for county employees. Why does this matter? because this is a suggestion I had that could have helped reduce the amount of taxes we needed in this budget by using some of the millions of dollars that are sitting in this fund unused and use it to pay part of the healthcare costs. Using some of that money would still mean that the fund would stay intact. If we continue to have the historical rate of growth, which includes the ups and downs of growth, that fund would increase faster than the withdrawals that we would make. So that fund would stay sound, but it will enable us every year to use some of the money that comes into the fund to pay current costs of employee healthcare, retirement healthcare. To date, we've never used any of the money to pay for county retirees' healthcare costs. Instead, all the county share comes from the general fund, and the general fund, as I think you know, is where your taxes go. Today, I'm urging the council to follow the guidance of the financial advisors and use some of the ever-growing trust fund for its intended purpose to help cover retiree healthcare costs. It is true that we've had a practice of doing what we're doing now for 15 years. That doesn't mean it was a good practice. It was probably a good idea to start setting up a fund, but we never used the fund the way it was intended. And we're proposing that we start using the fund the way it's intended. I'll go farther and say, when I was on the council and during previous councils, they rated the fund in order to, they rated the funding of the fund, reduced the payments in order to pay for ongoing funds in the operating budget. This year, there's no recommended payment. There's actually a recommendation that we reduce our funding. So we've gone or taking money that was supposed to go into the fund in the past for other things. It's time to start using it for what it was intended for, and it's time to use it in a responsible way that keeps the base fund intact and will provide this flow of revenues that the county can use to help fund some of the things that we're struggling to fund right now. So if people are looking for a way to fund the school system fully and the other things that we've been trying to do and want to reduce the tax burden a little, this is a place to go. We already do this for healthcare costs of school retirees. Quite ironic, because both funds are managed by us, but for the school system, they're allowed to take some of the money and put it toward paying the school retirees, and we treat county retirees in our system completely differently. If there's a logic, the logic should oppose to both. The school system fund is also equally enormous and in no sign of disappearing. So we believe it's fiscally prudent and it eases the burden on taxpayers, and it's an idea whose time has come. I also want to note an item in my recommended budget in the context of the entire budget. It's quite a small amount that can have a large impact. I included $246,000 to fund the Office of People's Counsel. This is an existing office. It was created in the 1990s by then council member Ike Leggett. It functioned until 1910, when we got hit with the recession and the council made a decision to not fund the office. That has now become a permanent decision of refusing to fund the office. And this office actually matters. I've heard from many residents asking that the funding be restored, because this is an office that levels the playing field. Many communities, when they're dealing with development or proposals for development in their community, are ill-equipped to match the expertise and information that developers and their attorneys have. It's like going to a boxing match with your hands tied behind your back. The Office of the People's Counsel was allowed to advocate for the public interest, as well as to help residents understand what their rights were, what the laws were, and how to go about making their case in front of either the planning board or the Board of Appeals. The Office of the People Counsel worked for a fair and complete record on land use matters, so that if things are being left out, if there were issues that were being glossed over, the OPC could raise those issues, and it does this on behalf of the public interest. In 2008, a report by the Office of Legislative Oversight, a council group, about the OPC, included interviews with over 50 people, and half government representatives, half non-governmental residents and land use attorneys, and almost all agreed on the need for and importance of the OPC. Many of our neighboring jurisdictions have similar offices, and they've maintained them for years, even while we have not. There's a bill recently introduced that would eliminate the Office of the People's Council and replace it with an utterly toothless entity. I want to quote from the Council's recent racial equity and social justice analysis. They looked at the Office of People's Council, they looked at the proposed replacement, and this is what they said. As advocates for the public interest in land use decisions, the offices of the People's Council are uniquely positioned to advocate for the interests of BIPOC and low-income constituents not typically represented in land use decisions. The analysis also notes that if the OPC were funded, it would advocate for racial equity and social justice as part of its advocacy for the public interest. And it concludes by recommending that the OPC be funded, not replaced. I know there are many competing budget demands, but this is a small amount that produces a large dividend in advocating for and protecting the public interest. And I hope the council will finally restore funding to this and not put a fig leaf around some other proposal and pretend it's going to do something that it's not going to do. They are not the same thing. In a community health update, one important change that is related to the end of the COVID-19 public health emergency is the end of expanded eligibility for Medicaid. During the pandemic, many more people were able to qualify for Medicaid, but beginning last month, current residents have been notified they'll no longer, they'll have to go through a redetermination process. They will no longer qualify as eligibility requirements return to the pre-pandemic guidelines. So if you were qualified because of an expansion of the pre-pandemic guidelines, you're going to have to reapply now, and you may not qualify under the new guidelines. The state's been notifying current enrollees of the change, but we want to emphasize the information so that Montgomery County residents know about this significant change. The redeterminations will not all happen at once, but when they happen, you'll know it. And if you're a Medicaid recipient, be sure that your contact information is up to date. Confirm your information at www.marylandhealthconnection.gov. Check-in. And if you've gotten renewal letters already, please be sure to respond to them, or you may risk losing your coverage. Again, this is a federal program, and if it disappears, the county's not going to be able to help you, so it's important that you're able to respond. The U.S. Public Health Emergency Declaration will end next week on May 11th. Residents should know that the county will continue to be a reliable source for vaccinations and testing if you need them. Our testing sites will discontinue PCR testing, but they'll have rapid tests available and can help residents test themselves on the spot. And 19 library locations will also continue to offer residents free rapid tests and masks. Currently, guidelines for those who are not vaccinated only call for one bivalent booster shot. So if you haven't had any shots, you can make up for everything you haven't had by getting a single bivalent booster right now and not go through a 2-dose regimen. For those that are immunocompromised or over 65, it may be time for a second booster shot, but I hope our community remains vigilant and up to date with the latest recommendations. Before I turn this over to our public health team for this week's report, and before taking questions from the media, I'm going to be receiving my second bivalent booster from Dr. Keisha Davis. So I'm going to take off my jacket, and I doubt if I'll be able to roll up my sleeve high enough, so forgive me for possibly
You can come off.
opening up my shirt.
You can come off camera if you need to.
Well, how am I going to get a shot of this?
It's okay. They'll
No.
understand.
No, they won't. Is this high enough?
No, actually, if you undo this button here,
Oh.
make it look again.
Success.
There we go. There we
All right. Since I don't like shots, I'll probably be closing my eyes and certainly not looking at it.
go. Well, what you need to do is relax. Let this arm hang, loosey-goosey. There we go. Get to that meaty muscular part there, right?
Just muscular part.
the muscular part.
Bear with me, folks.
Deep breath and don't cry.
Deep breath.
No crying.
No crying. Cough.
As I understand, this chip is solar power that they just put into you.
Yes. I specially requested the solar powered chip with 5G radiation so I can send my signal throughout the universe.
Dr. Davis, does he get a lollipop?
No, I can't have the sugar.
Thank you, guys.
It's just a small one.
Okay.
It's just a small
This is, I think, my 5th shot, and I've not had a reaction to any of them. I've had no effect the next day, so I'm looking forward to another pain-free experience here. And with all of that, I'm going to turn this over to the health report and then our media questions. Thank you all very much.
Okay, 1 second, I'll share my screen. And as we go through our weekly report, I just want to remind folks that with the ending of the public health emergency, it's not the ending of COVID as a disease that is prevalent in our county as well as across the world. But it is a transition to utilizing other resources. There's still federal resources, there's still state and local resources to do this. And Health and Human Services in Montgomery County is committed to continuing to do surveillance to identify when there's changes in threat levels. Looking at those, what I'm sharing with you, surveillance today, there's predictions based on previous weeks' CDC surveillance of the variant. We're continuing to see a higher percentage of these XBB 1.5 derivatives, the 1.16 and the 1.91. They're growing as part of our total number of transmissions. We haven't seen a huge increase across our reportable testing, which is the PCR testing. We have noted this has gone up a little bit over the last week, and then it leveled off and went up a little bit today. But we're not seeing that translate at this time to hospitalizations. We're still cautioning our high-risk residents, those who are over 65, those who are immunocompromised, still cautioning them that they're at risk for COVID complications, those with multiple underlying conditions. That's why the FDA, the CDC, and state and local health departments are recommending a second booster for those people, or a second bivalent shot for those people over 65 or those people who are immunocompromised. Again, tracking along with our hospitals, we're not seeing a large change in emergency department visits. We look at flu-like symptoms, which indicate contagious diseases going to the emergency department. We look at total visits. We look at data from our partners at Fire Rescue who report on all the patients they transfer and their oxygenation levels. And again, all of these data correlate with what we see with COVID cases. So even as some data will not be reported as frequently at either the federal, state, or local level, we do have access to lots of different data. We continue to monitor it. At our hospitalizations overall, there was no change in the total number of patients between last week and this week with a COVID diagnosis. That is down to 18 total individuals. Again, we continue to track mortality for this. I want to emphasize, even as we see the numbers come down, these are still a lot of deaths that we believe mostly could be preventable with an appropriate vaccination strategy and precaution strategy. So that's why we continue to emphasize this message. We'd like to see these deaths closer to zero. Again, we continue to distribute rapid test kits at all of our libraries, a few of our rec centers. You can go online for more details. There's a lot of information there. And we keep updating our webpage where people can go for different services. We'll be standing down our PCR testing on May 11th. We've already seen very, very limited utilization of that. The vast majority of people are using rapid test kits. But if someone does need a PCR test, there's a great search engine that the CDC runs for no cost COVID-19 testing. So even if you don't have insurance, you can go there and, if you're symptomatic or have been exposed, they'll provide the test and there'll be no out-of-pocket costs. Those are the updates we have across public health. Again, we just want to emphasize the importance for all of our residents who have been on Medicaid over the last few years. Please make sure that you log into the system, make sure your contact information is updated, and just monitor it for communications from our state counterparts as well as the local Office of Eligibility Services. Some people may be notified that they no longer qualify at the end of the public health emergency, and we'll work with you to identify other sources of healthcare insurance, either through the exchange or through other services that may be available. So again, please monitor it. We don't want anybody to be surprised, and we want to be able to help you in advance of you needing those services.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. For those of you watching us at home through County Cable Montgomery, this broadcast will end on that channel at 1:30 this afternoon in about 11 minutes or so, 15 minutes or so. But we continue on the county's YouTube channel as well as the county's Facebook page, which is Montgomery County Government. Dr. Sauter, do you have any opening remarks?
No, we can take questions.
Okay, so we're ready to open it up for the Q&A portion of this presentation. Members of the media, use the chat. The county executive, you're coming back. Your camera was off. Thank you. Let's see, members of the media, this is the Q&A portion of the presentation. If you want to ask any questions, raise your hand or use the chat, please.
I want to raise one more thing before you ask the first question. Something I meant to mention during this COVID part. In case anybody is confused about whether COVID's still around, it is the fourth leading cause of death. That is not something that has gone away. That's something that's still with us. It's still killing people. So people should not get too comfortable in ignoring something that is the fourth leading cause of death. That's why I got my shot. I prefer not to become part of that statistic. Anyway, go on with the questions.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. I think the first question comes from Jeannie Bixby from Moco 360. Jeannie, do you want to ask a question? Go ahead. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Am I okay to ask now? It's not a health related.
Yep, anything you want.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. Hi, Mark. I wanted to ask you about, you've put out this letter pushing back against this Little Falls Parkway project. Could you talk a little bit about why you've chosen to do this?
Because I thought, looking at it and listening to some of the residents' concerns, it seems that our approach was a little bit like a sledgehammer. I am not in favor of cutting down those many trees. And I think there has to be a greater effort made to preserve the trees. I mean, if we're going to go through neighborhoods and do that, it's going to make a lot of people unhappy. And, this sidewalk, from the data I saw, had more opposition than it had support. So if we're going to do something, we should do it to try to maximize the amount of support for the project. So I'm glad the department's going to take a look at it and look at what they can do in terms of location of the sidewalk, width of the sidewalk. I've got a third suggestion I'd like them to look at that would accomplish getting a sidewalk there, but would not be so environmentally destructive.
This question's about the falls.
Was this Little Falls? Oh, I thought it was a question about Rock Creek Manor. Sorry. Little Falls. Yes, I did push back on Little Falls.
Yeah.
I've seen the traffic back up there, number one. So I know the traffic backing up is not an imaginary thing. I know that residents have seen an increase of traffic through the neighborhood. I know that if Little Falls is backed up, that the neighborhood streets become the fire department route to Bethesda. not Little Falls Parkway, which is a better route. And I don't think, given the amount of development that's planned for the West Part area, where they're talking about thousands of housing units and major additions of retail, that it's a good idea to do this. And it's not like they're taking the whole thing away. They're going into the middle of a road, and then for a small area, they're taking out a slice of the road. And it makes no sense. You got 2 lanes that are going to feed to one. And then it's going to go. Then it goes back after that. It just doesn't make sense to me. And there are ways to make sure the bicyclists are safe without doing that. So I don't support the configuration. I thought Andrew Friedson's letter was pretty good. And, I don't always agree with Andrew about things, but I thought he nailed that one pretty well.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Jeannie. For those of you watching on County Cable, Montgomery going to be off the air already. So pardon, I said 1:30, it was 1:20. Any more questions, members of the media, for the county executive and or the rest of our guests today? No more questions?
I miss Steve Bonnell, because right before you would say no more questions, Steve would be, another question.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you feel good. Well, this afternoon after that shot, Mr. County Executive. And
it's all psychological. I will have no effects from this.
Beautiful. So we'll see you all next time. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.